For memorization, reversible competitive inhibitors resemble the substrate, can be overcome by adding more substrate, bind to the active site, do not change the maximum velocity, Vmax, increase the apparent K-ember, decrease apparent affinity, affect the potency of the drug. Irreversible competitive inhibitors resemble the substrate, cannot be overcome by adding more substrate, bind to the active site, do not change Km, but reduce Vmax, affect the efficacy of the drug. Do not resemble the substrate, cannot be overcome by adding more substrate, do not bind to the active site, allosteric site, do not change Km, affect the efficacy of the drug. Affect USMLE practice questions. Q1. Which of the following best describes a reversible competitive inhibitor? A. Changes Km and Vmax. B. Can be overcome by increased substrate concentration. C. Binds to an allosteric site. D. Reduces efficacy of the enzyme. E. Changes both potency and efficacy. Correct answer B. Can be overcome by increased substrate concentration. Reversible competitive inhibitors compete with the substrate for the active site and can be overcome if the substrate concentration is increased. Why not the others? A. Changes Km only, not Vmax. C. Binds to the active site, not an allosteric site. D. Doesn't reduce efficacy, Vmax. It affects potency, Km. E. Affects only potency, not efficacy. Q2. What is the main difference between an irreversible competitive inhibitor and a reversible competitive inhibitor? A. Binding site, allosteric versus active site. B. Ability to be overcome by increased substrate concentration. C. Changes in Km only. D. Changes in efficacy only. E. No effect on enzyme activity. Ability to be overcome by increased substrate concentration. Explanation. Irreversible competitive inhibitors form a permanent bond with the enzyme, making it impossible to overcome by adding more substrate. Why not the others? A. Both bind the active site. C. Irreversible inhibitors affect Vmax, not just Km. D. Irreversible affects efficacy Vmax, not just Km. E. Irreversible affects activity. Q3. What is true about a non-competitive inhibitor? A. Increases Km and decreases Vmax. B. Changes Km but does not affect Vmax. C. Decreases Vmax, does not affect Km. D. Increases substrate binding affinity. E. Is always reversible competitive. Correct answer C. Decreases Vmax, does not affect Km. Explanation? Non-competitive inhibitors reduce the overall ability of the enzyme, decrease Vmax, regardless of substrate concentration, as they bind to an allosteric site and do not affect substrate binding. Why not the others? A. Changes Vmax only, not Km. B. Changes Vmax, not Km. D. Reduces activity regardless of binding affinity. E. Not competitive. If you want, I can give you a quick